It's a 2-for-1 kind of video today. Going to be painting up for my Death Guard army 2 Chaos Predator Annihilators. 2 different flavours as well. This one here you see in first is the 40k version. It's been over quite a few years now actually, so although it's the new one in game terms, it's from the 41st millennium, it's the old one in terms of when the model was released. The other version we're going to be doing is the Horus Heresy. Obviously newer model, came out more recently, but in the background of the game it's the far older variant. You know, it's been around in service for 10,000 years. Very, very fitting to the Death Guard, and I thought for a bit of fun it'd be interesting to do those 2 different models of Predator. One is a bit more interesting to paint two slightly different things, but other it gives that conversation of which of these is better for using in your army. These are being used for 40k, these are being used for Death Guard, and I wanted 2 Predator Annihilators in my army. I think the rules purposes are great. Going a bit old school with this army that I'm doing now. So if you watch the channel recently, you'll know I've added a Land Raider into the force. These 2 Predators are going to kind of work alongside, maybe as a backline kind of force. And I went for the las cannon armament Annihilator variant. Now you'll see me battle damage the model in the background. Why am I showing you a Plague Marine? Well, it gets a bit controversial sometimes when you drill the barrels of your model. So here's another controversial point. Drilling your exhaust ports. Is that controversial, or do we all do it? And that, I suppose, sparks a first difference in these models. The 40k Predator Annihilator is quite an old model, so solid exhaust part, whereas the 30k version, the Horus Heresy version, the exhaust come in 2 parts. So the sort of exhaust are already pre-drilled. And I think that's what separates the 2 models. The Predator, quite scarily, someone on my Instagram commented that for nostalgia purposes they prefer the 40k one, and I thought, nostalgia, what do you mean? And then realised quite how old that kit actually is. So yeah, it's been out for quite a while, so the newer kit obviously has a little bit more modelling interest, and maybe it's a little bit better. Talk more later. Now into the painting. Sprayed it black. Sprayed it lead belcher, the best undercoat for doing 40k models, I believe. And then we're starting off with this one, which is a Grell and Earth. Now this is a crackle paint the Games Workshop do. It's a technical paint, and it really, as it dries, it cracks and will make a real nice sort of damaged armour effect we'll see later. Now on to Retributor armour for all the brass areas. So the exhausts are very different on these 2 models. Less exposed on the 40k version. Obviously they're up armoured, those exhausts, as the millennia have gone on. Much more exposed kind of exhaust for the 30k version. And obviously there's the vents and stuff at the back of the tank. Now, moving on to Death Guard Green, you'll notice this the cracks and damage that's coming off from this Grell and Earth. This has been left well overnight. I think it was actually 2 nights this was left. It dries within about 4 or 5 hours, but I would always recommend leaving it overnight just in case. Now, when I'm layering this Death Guard Green on, you'll see the thin layers going on very carefully, side to side motion, almost going across the grain of that flakes rather than stabbing down onto it. You don't want to use a large quantity of paint on top of your brush because that will fill those cracks and almost waste the effort of what you're doing. Now I'm aiming predominantly to put the green on the areas we've painted the Grell and Earth. I will put it on areas that we haven't put that on because, you know, I may have not put it in all areas I want it, but the reason you're leaving it off certain areas is that metal will then be exposed and it starts to sort of or add to the battle damaging kind of the tank. So you'll see the greens there, you'll see in patches, you can still see the brown of the Grell and Earth showing through. Now that's not a problem because we're going to do a wash stage later that will take the tones down and you'll stop seeing that. So you're not going for completely full coverage. Now onto the sort of, what do you call them, armour sections that we're going to put into a bone colour. So we're going to take a bone colour and go onto here. You'll see I did actually paint the green on there already. Realised what I was doing. I went, oh no, I want this bone. Not a problem if you do that. You can overpaint it. I'm doing this in the bone colour to reflect that kind of Death Guard colour scheme of the Death Guard green and the kind of bone shoulder trims and things that they had, or vice versa actually on the 30k models. So you could use both these tanks in 30k, I suppose, but they are geared more for 40k, more for the millennia of kind of damage they're having. And you can see hopefully how slowly I'm building up the colour, and it is far more vibrant with this bone colour that we're using rather than the green, but building it up quite slowly because we want to see those cracks. Now onto the armour shrouds of the las cannons. I suppose in the background you can see there the 30k Predator. There's no kind of armour around the las cannons, and I think that's how they're showing maybe technological advancement, maybe I don't know what they're going for, but it looks sort of more armoured, more protected. But is that less technologically advanced as the millennia have gone on? You know, or is it just common sense we're armouring things up? Interestingly, there's more armour on the actual chassis of the 30k model, but there's more armour on the kind of weapons and exhausts and things like that of the 40k model. So just that little bit of difference. So you can see here onto the weapons of the 30k, there is no shroud, so we're not using red at all on the 30k model. but using the ends of the guns into some black and using the plasma coils, not plasma coils, or las cannon coils along the weapon. And you see those ridges going around, we do those in black as well. And we're almost at the end of this colour scheme. It's very, very quick and easy. Wasn't going for anything too complex with these. You'll notice I haven't done any tentacles or mutations or anything like that. Keeping them fairly simple and just aged and battle damaged. I may come back and put some nurglings on the top of them to pull it in, but actually I really like how the end effect kind of goes. Now this is another interesting technical paint. This is Typhus Corrosion, gives some real nice lumpy rust, and I'm putting this on the areas that border where those pure metal areas are showing through, almost to give different levels of degradation to that to the armour. When all that's thoroughly dried, giving a really, really thorough coating of Vallejo Sepia Game Wash. Now it's in a funny little small pot. If you watch my videos of the week about accidents that happen in wargaming, you'll know why it's in a small pot. If you haven't watched that, go check it out on the channel and you'll see a couple of disasters I had with the wash. This is a real kind of nice, dirty sepia wash. One I've done for years, absolutely love it. And it really does kind of mucky down the model and gives a real nice grimdark effect that gives us a base to work off on these next kind of stages. You could use Games Workshop Seraphim Sepia, does not dirty it down as much, but if you're going to use that, you'd have to put a little bit more Death Guard green on to those Grell Earth areas, because it won't take down the colour as much as this does, so those areas of brown would show through that a little bit more. So we've done the wash, it's dried overnight, and now it's the relayering. So you'll see it's dried really dirty, manky. You might want to leave it at this stage. Personally, this bit of work here really improves it. What I'm doing here is very, very thin layers of the Death Guard green. So going over very slowly, very thin layer, and spreading that paint out across more of an area than you usually would. So you don't want to totally cover it. You want to leave all the kind of colours and shades and everything that's underneath that paint showing through. You're just taking it down a level to bring it a little bit more looking to the Death Guard green. So it's very much not the clean Death Guard green that the Games Workshop sort of painters do. They tend to have a very clean green with some streaks and things on it. The streaks in this are underneath and kind of almost built into the armour work. You'll see how slowly I'm doing it, and I'll show you very shortly just a comparison between when the whole model is done versus what it looks like when it's not kind of painted. So finished the Predator of the Horus Heresy, and then we're putting it next to the 40k one, so you can see there it has really completely changed the tone of that tank, and I think really is a much sort of nicer approach. You know, I have tried doing tanks just completely in the Death Guard green and doing it a bit more like Games Workshop do it, and then put the streaks on. I don't like that way. This is very much my kind of painting scheme that I've done with the Death Guard for years. I think it works really well. Don't know if any of you guys have tried it, or whether you just watch these things and think that's a bit of fun, but I don't want to mess like that. But you know, give it a go. I really enjoy this kind of style of painting. So then it's the same with the rest of the paints, but before that we're doing a bit of muck and damage to the exhaust here. So it's a 3-stage wash that I've done for a long time now. Druchii Violet, Drakenov Nightshade and Nuln Oil. You start off the first layer just covering a lot of the area, really kind of covering every single part of the brass. The next one you maybe cover half to 3/4, and then Nuln Oil just kind of finishing off as you go. And normally I'd leave this till last, so I suppose why not? Well, literally I was going off and doing something in between the first layer, so I left the paint for a while, let that to dry a bit and came there. So sometimes actually how you paint your models in these kind of batches will depend on what else you're doing in that given day. You know, drop in, do a quick bit, drop out. The rest of it really is kind of working on the paints we've already covered and going back over the same technique I've just spoken about with the Death Guard green. So really now it's sort of comparing which model would I use in future for the army. I think both of them have got a place in 40k, definitely. I think I am verging towards, I prefer this 30k version. Just draw attention actually to the bone we're doing on here. You can see how thick it went on, and then clean the brush, and then I'm spreading that paint out a lot across the model. So I did put too much a thick layer on. So if you do that, just remember this paint will take a while to dry depending on how hot your room is. So just don't let it spoil your day. Just spread it out. You can take that paint a lot further than you would actually think. So yeah, really thinking about it, I think I do prefer the 30k version. Let's look at a side by side now when the models are finished. The 30k model has got more armour across the bulk. The 40k's got less armour on the actual bulk of the tank. It's got armour around the weaponry. It's got a very differently styled turret, and I think that's maybe what might spin you. Do you prefer the old style, going back to the 1980s, 1990s, spoon lid Predator? And I think I do. Yeah, so glad I did the two models, glad I got them as a comparison, but I really do think that the 30k fits in more. And I did notice here actually over the shroud of the las cannon, I didn't paint any green on there, so the models are not quite finished in this video, which is not normal for me. But yeah, to have a look, both got the place, and I think actually a lot of people out there might prefer the 40k one, because if that's what you grew up with, but I grew up with spoon-lid Predators in the 80s and 90s. Another thing to think about is spares. If you're a kit basher like I am, these are the spares you get from the 40k kit. You don't actually get a lot of spares. You get some, you know, and you can do some stuff with it, but you don't get the absolute mountain of spares that you'll see in a second with the 30k one. Now, is that because the 30k has got more options, or is it because it's a newer kit and they're giving you more? But think about this is the, I suppose, the personnel kit and the turret kit. Look at the amount of extras you get versus what we just saw on the 40k one. Some really cool heads on here as well. Another point to note, I haven't put Havoc launchers or Storm Bolters or anything like that on either of these models because I didn't want to, but you could do. You get more variants for the weapons that go on the sides, and actually they're probably more useful because they've not got a shroud across them. So actually, can you do that? And then the main weapon, you got some really cool kind of, I don't even know what they are, graviton guns or whatever they're called, that you could use for power plants and other things. So if you're a kit basher, maybe that'll make you think about which one of these kits you're going to pick up. Personally, for me, I think it's the 30k Horus Heresy one. Time some close-ups just so you can get a bit of a sense of the colour and what's going on. Hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you on the channel again.